Cold rules that help sensitive, warm-hearted people. Today, I'm going to outline a few cold rules that sensitive people need to follow in order to help themselves as a warm-hearted person in their own lives. The first thing that they need to do is to create financial security for themselves, regardless if they are single or if they are in a relationship. They need to imagine, what would happen if my partner were to die tomorrow? Maybe you have the most loyal person in your life that you could possibly imagine, but they're actually gone the next day through no fault of their own, through a random death. And so you need to think about, what would you do in the case of your partner leaving or dying on you? How would you take really good care of yourself? As a sensitive person, you need to have that financial backbone so that you're ready to move at a moment's notice if you have to. And if you're working towards saving for a house, for example, that's a great long-term goal, but you might need a short-term savings goal as well in case something were to happen tomorrow, and saving for the house might take 3 years. So you may need a down payment on a small rental apartment available. Not saying you have to take that down payment and use it on a rental apartment. If you prefer to use it on a house, just keep it in savings. Keep that extra little nest egg in case something were to happen along the way while you're saving for that house. You'll be ready in case you have an emergency, and you'll be able to take really good care of yourself. The next piece of advice for warm-hearted, sensitive people is to find validation in themselves rather than from the outside world. You have to learn to trust yourself first and believe in your own opinions and your own wisdom and expertise before you take in the advice of anyone else. And it's great to look to experts. It's great to seek advice from people who are more successful than you. It just becomes a problem when you stop trusting yourself and you give away your whole life to external authorities. That's not a good thing. And I'll give you a really practical example of this. Imagine you're going to a bank and you're going to discuss investment options in stock, and you don't really know very much about investments. You're going to trust the stock advisor to give you the correct advice. But what happens is that stock investor will also get some kind of margin when you choose to invest with them. And so they'll always want you to keep your investments with them. But if the market crashes, they may give you the wrong advice to stick with it and go through the market crash, rather than to actually get rid of your stock at that point. And I'm not saying that that's always true, by the way. It's a very complicated thing to learn how to invest, but we all need to learn to take responsibility in our own way for our money and for our security in life. We can't always rely on outside sources to give us the best information, because sometimes they fail us. Sometimes they don't give us the right information. And sometimes it's the best thing actually to keep your money in the stock market too, rather than take it out when things seem scary. And it really depends. So that's why we all have to educate ourselves on what's going on with investments today. How does the stock market really work? Can bonds fail? And the answer is yes, actually they can. So that's another surprise that people run into when they learn how to invest. So you have to do your own diligence and your own research to find things that are actually secure, and ways to have a security fund first before you dive too deeply into risky investments where you can lose a lot of money. And when you learn those skills yourself, you become your own best friend. You become your own best security banker. And then you don't need to rely on the expert opinion of others in order to save your skin when the time comes when the market fails. And this is just a very practical example of watching your own back and making sure your finances are in good shape, rather than leaving it to the authority figures to decide what is right for you. But this can be true in terms of your health. If you're not feeling well and your doctor's gaslighting you, telling you you're fine, go get help from another doctor. Keep going until you get the support that you need, because that doctor may be a generalist and they may not know the specialized illness that you have, and you might need a specialized doctor to have a look at you. That happens a lot in medicine. And so you just want to make sure, if you're not feeling good, that you're being well taken care of. And it's the same with relationships. Even very expert psychologists sometimes give wrong information and wrong opinions about relationships. You know, they'll keep telling you to keep working on the relationship and to stay because they're too afraid to give you that advice to tell you to leave because it's a big financial commitment. And also telling people to leave can also be really wrong advice too. So it's hard to really give good relationship advice to people on whether to stay or leave. But be aware when people are giving you that kind of advice that they can be wrong. And it's really up to you at the end of the day. If someone's telling you to stay in a relationship, but it doesn't feel good to you, then don't be afraid to walk out and leave. If you're getting the feeling that maybe the relationship can be saved, even if people are saying that person's a bad person and you should break up, then follow your instinct to keep working on it. So don't necessarily give your whole life away to authority figures just because you feel warm and fuzzy about them and you may have a big heart. Understand that your opinion is where the buck stops and that you have to take really good care of yourself as a sensitive person. And the last bit of cold advice for warm-hearted, sensitive people is to be careful who you give your money and your time to. Don't invest time and resources into people who are going to take you for granted. What happens when you do that is you actually not only lose the time and the money, but you lose your self-respect. And you might think, well, what about people who are weaker than me? So you can choose to mentor people who are weaker than you, who are trying to strive and make something of themselves. That's a great way actually to give to other people and be generous. And we do want to be generous and warm-hearted as intuitives. We just want to be careful that we're not investing our time and resources in people who can't really reciprocate. Or sometimes we have our own talents and abilities, but they don't really match the person who is in need. For example, I wouldn't call myself an expert on the homeless. I wouldn't be really good at rehabilitating the homeless and helping them live in a house and have a well-adjusted life. That might be a little bit beyond my expertise because I'm not an addictions counselor, for example, but maybe I could help somebody who's in a similar position to where I was at when I was 18. And I can help them really develop their life and take it to the next level. So you have to know your abilities within yourself and know who you can help and who you need to let go of. Not because you don't care necessarily, it might just be because you don't have the skills to really help that person. And that goes in dating too. If people are red flaggy, it's not necessarily your responsibility to fix them. You may not have the skills to do that, and you need to leave them to find the resources that they need in order to fix themselves.